we all know that the banksters only care about the bottom line, right? So only the threat of losing massive year-end bonuses could make them freak out, right? And therefore, they shouldn't care about climate change because that has nothing to do with banking, right? Wrong. Banksters are now freaking out about climate change, too, because it's going to hit their bottom lines and hard. Climate change has the potential to devastate economies, and if that happens, banks will be devastated, too. On Wednesday, the president of the World Bank said that the world should stop arguing about whether humans are the cause of climate change and instead start taking action to curb climate change's devastating effects. At a Thomson Reuters newsmaker event in London yesterday, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim said that there was a 97 to 98% agreement in the scientific community that global warming and climate change are real and that they are caused by human activity. Kim went on to say, if you disagree with the science of human-caused climate change, you are not disagreeing that there is anthropogenic climate change. What you are disagreeing with is science itself. Governments across the planet are already doing something about this. Many have agreed to limit global temperature rises to below 2 degrees Celsius, which is about 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. But the banksters at the World Bank are saying that isn't enough. And they're right. Jim Yong Kim noted in his speech that as extreme weather events continue to get worse and more prevalent, public opinion about climate change should start to change. Referring to the United States, Kim said that, quote, as extreme weather events occur, such as in the Midwest and Hurricane Sandy, etc., other legislators will come around, end quote. Kim then went on to talk about how China, the world's second largest economy, is already taking the issues of global warming and climate change very seriously. In fact, while China is the biggest emitter of carbon dioxide in the world and is still continuing to build dirty coal power plants, they are also investing millions of dollars in solar and wind power, more than any other country in the world, especially us. Yeah, this should be a good thing, according to Kim, right? This is a positive sign. China's doing this. China's working hard to develop its own national carbon market. And this week, I don't think it has anything to do with their banks freezing up, hopefully. China launched its first emissions trading scheme in the highly industrialized city of Shenzhen. You will recall that back in the late 80s, maybe it was the early 90s, it was, Bush Sr.'s reign of error was from 89 to 92. But, or arguably, January of 93. During that time, he put into place a cap and trade program to get rid of acid rain. He capped the amount of sulfur dioxide that power plants could release, because it's fairly easily scrubbed out of the smokestacks, and then allowed banks to trade and speculate on the commodity, basically, of these caps, of these carbon caps. And within a couple of decades, acid rain is no longer a problem. Cap and trade took care of it. So we've done that before. Yong Kim, the president of the World Bank, said that, quote, if we get China, the U.S., and the EU to agree on a price for CO2, we'll have a market mechanism to fight climate change. I hope a practical solution will happen before 2020. End of quote. Now, the European Union has had a carbon market in place since 2005. That's what, 7 years? 8 years? And China is really working hard to try to set up a carbon emissions trading scheme. And like I said, there's one that went into effect this week in Shenzhen, which is one of their largest industrialized cities. It's right across the bay from Hong Kong, well, right across the bay in about a 3-hour drive up. I've been there. Louise and I were there back in the early 80s when Shenzhen was a little town of maybe 5,000 people. And, the one restaurant in town we had lunch at, and the bathroom was literally a hole in the floor. That was the bathroom. Now it's like this giant industrialized city with 1 million or more people in it and factories everywhere. And so So China's doing it. The EU has been doing it since 2005. China started it this week. But here in the United States, we still have crackpots like every single freshman member of the United States House of Representatives who's a Republican saying not only there's nothing to do anything about, but there ain't even any such thing. You know, Bill McKibben, back last summer in a Rolling Stone article, pointed out that the fossil fuel industry is the only industry in the United States that doesn't have to pay to have its waste disposed of. Think about that. If you're a restaurant owner, you have to pay to have somebody come pick up your leftovers. If you're an office manager, you pay to have somebody recycle all your used papers. If you own a construction company, you pay to have someone haul off the waste materials from a construction site. But with the good old fossil fuel industry, you and I are left to pay the cost of their waste. Their waste, of course, being carbon dioxide. And these costs come in the form of higher food prices, thanks to climate change-driven droughts, and massive cleanup efforts, thanks to climate change-driven superstorms like Hurricane Sandy. We don't pay for restaurants to dispose of their trash. So why should we have to pay for big oil to dispose of theirs? I mean, yesterday, senior White House officials said that President Obama is preparing regulations that would limit CO2 emissions from existing power plants. According to the New York Times, if those regulations go through, they would mark, quote, the most consequential climate policy step he could take, end quote. Although I'd say turning down the Keystone XL pipeline is probably the flip a coin. But in any case, that's, just doing it through the EPA is not enough. America needs a carbon tax. And we need it now. We need some real way of accounting for the real cost of carbon. Is it $30 a ton? Is it $50 a ton? Is it $80 a ton? Is it $100 a ton? A lot of estimates now are suggesting that the actual cost of this carbon dioxide, the cost that you and I are paying, is more like $120 a ton. If we want to have any hope of combating the greatest threat that this planet has ever faced. During his speech in Berlin, Germany yesterday, President Obama spoke to the crowd about climate change. Here he is.
The effort to slow climate change requires bold action. And on this, Germany and Europe have led. In the United States, we have recently doubled our renewable energy from clean sources like wind and solar power. We're doubling fuel efficiency on our cars. Our dangerous carbon emissions have come down, but we know we have to do more. And we will do more. With a global middle class consuming more energy every day, this must now be an effort of all nations, not just some. For the grim alternative affects all nations. More severe storms, more famine and floods, new waves of refugees, coastlines that vanish, oceans that rise. This is the future we must avert. This is the global threat of our time. And for the sake of future generations, our generation must move toward a global compact to confront a changing climate before it is too late. That is our job. That is our task. We have to get to work.
President Obama's right. But it's going to take more than a speech. It's time for us to start taking the bold actions needed to save our planet, and that starts right now. For once, let's put the interests of big oil aside, put a price on this carbon dioxide waste, and help preserve the future of the only planet that you and I, as far as we know of right now, the only planet that you and I can call home. Time for a carbon tax. Cap and trade, halfway. Hey, it's better than nothing. But a carbon tax, that's the easy solution. Put a carbon tax on, and all of a sudden, all of the alternative energy sources become cheaper than fossil fuels. Hey.